Hi all, for our notable game today, let's look at another amazing Bobby Fischer game, this time against Miguel Najdorf, which got the name of one of the most popular Rolls-Royce variations of the Sicilian defence, named after them. So Miguel Najdorf is playing black in this game, and he chooses the Sicilian Najdorf. You can't get better than that, can you? Miguel Najdorf was of Polish origin. He was born actually in 1910, died in 1997, 87 years old. He was a pupil of Savelye Tartakower, who was a great author of chess quotations, a very witty chess quotations. So I'm pretty sure he must have had a fantastic time being a pupil of that person. At age 20, he became a Polish national master. He played for Poland in the Chess Olympiads of 1935, 37, 39. He was playing in the Buenos Aires Olympiad in 1939 when World War II broke out, and decided not to attempt to return home. And he took Argentinian citizenship in 1944, adopting the first name Miguel. His family, left behind, died in German concentration camps. In 1943, he set the record for simultaneous games played. He played 202 players, and he scored 182 wins, 8 losses, 12 draws. In 1947, he conducted a symbol in which he played a record 45 games blindfolded. He won 39, lost 2, and drew 4. This is a very seriously strong player. Some of his Olympiad achievements are just simply better than the likes of Fischer. I'll come on to the Olympiads in just one moment though. In the 1950s, he competed in several major international events, including 2 candidate tournaments. He was the Argentinian representative at the USSR versus Rest of the World match in 1970. He won the Argentinian Championship 8 times, 1949, 51, 52, 55, 60, 64, 67, 75, and continued to promote chess in his country until his death in 1997. A profound theorist, and of course the most popular opening, one of the most popular chess openings of all time that Najdorf named after him, Sicilian Najdorf. Now, Olympiads. He played for Argentina in the Chess Olympiads from 1950 to 76. So he was representing Argentina in this game against Fischer in the Varna Olympiad final of 1962, which I'm going to show you. He played first board for the 9th Chess Olympiad at Dubrovnik in 1950, as well as Helsinki 1952, Amsterdam 1954, Moscow 1956, Leipzig 1960, and this is the one, Varna, that I'm showing you, 1962. Havana 1966, Lugano 1968, Siegen 1970, Haifa 1976. Only during the Olympiad at 1974 did he play third board. He took 11 Olympic medals, 7 for teams Poland and Argentina, and 4 individuals, gold in 1939, 50, 52, and a silver in 1962. He had a fantastic performance overall in this particular Olympiad, which I'm going to show you. This is, in fact, okay, I'll tell you after statistically about that. Well, I could tell you now. This is the only game which Najdorf didn't do so well. Let's have a look. E4 from Fischer. Najdorf plays the Sicilian Najdorf, knight f3, d6 with the open Sicilian, and the characteristic Najdorf move, a6. So what did Fischer want to play against Najdorf in the Najdorf? Well, he chooses h3. Yes, this has been quite popular recently with Caruana and Anand trying this out, this h3 move. Sometimes it's preparing to finish at the bishop, sometimes the pawn's going there for central control. So black reacts here with b5. So the idea of bishop b7 to put pressure on e4 is classic, but a non-stereotypical type move now is played. Knight d5. It's pretty sharp stuff. It's already offering the e-pawn, but there might be some backfires if that pawn is taken. The diagonal is pretty sensitive. There's a loose piece already on a8, so maybe things like queen f3 are particularly dangerous. Let's have a quick check actually for the materialistic inclined Yeah, queen f3 is dangerous along this diagonal. Let's not get too far into it, but this position, this forcing sequence is actually, there's multiple dangers. Also c7 here. There's a lot of initiative. It's a strong initiative for white here. Let's turn that off. So there's enough for the pawn. Just in case you're wondering. So let's go back. So knight d5. Pawn. It's going to be dangerous for queen f3. So black plays bishop b7. That does allow some structural damage. Maybe in this position, an idea is also just to play e6. There's a couple of games in line with e6. So if taking at least, queen takes f6, there's no structural issue. Okay, so you might think, well, does black get some piece activity for this? White did take to double the pawns, and it is a useful thing to double pawns. You might think, well, is it a problem with the bishop? Black's still threatening e4. What about this g-file later? One problem with this complex is actually f7 is a little bit vulnerable, if you think about it. That first of the double pawns. Fischer now plays a move which actually, in a way, tries to open up a diagonal to f7 here. He leaves the e-pawn hanging again. He plays c4, targeting b5, but trying to get this bishop on this diagonal, targeting f7. Is this really the Achilles heel of this pawn structure? It's fascinating to think of that. But it's only the king defending f7. If you look at these other pawns, they're like protecting each other. So that is a kind of vulnerable pawn there. And also with the king there, this diagonal could be useful as well for the queen coming to h5. Nothing is stopping the queen's entry to h5 or g4. There's no defensive knight on f6. So a very interesting move, c4. You might think intuitively, how do you think about this? So black actually did take on c4, and now we have bishop takes c4, pointing at f7. It's very, very dangerous already, this position. The bishop's also loose, and there's things like even queen b3. There's a threat perhaps immediately of bishop takes f7 and queen b3. So black has to do something about his b7 loose piece here, as well as the f7 target. He does take on e4. And I'll be a little bit concerned about this with this lack of development. White plays castling now, and there's multiple opportunities here based on the bishop, the f7 weakness, and a potentially loose rook if the bishop ever goes off this diagonal. There's another loose piece liability. There's this diagonal as well as this diagonal. So there's quite a few tactical concerns. Black tries to address most of them with d5. Now Fischer just keeps the pressure. He doesn't move his bishop back just yet. He plays rook e1. And there's very interesting possibilities. On engine inspection, it seems black's best might have been the very tactical bishop takes g2 to try and weaken white's king. But it's a lot of complications from this move. For example, knight e6 is even possible based on this diagonal, with the king still in the centre with no development. This is a position very ripe in attacking opportunities. So it's pretty scary stuff, this sort of thing. So bishop takes g2 maybe is a step too far, but it does attempt to weaken the king. If the king just took here, then check, and taking here would give queen d5 to justify bishop takes g2, and maybe black's on the verge of doing well. But in this position, e5 is played. So black has these centre pawns. White has no centre pawns on d or e files. The king is still stuck in the centre. Apart from the bishop, nothing is developed in black's position. There are diagonals all over the shop here against the king. Fischer chooses this one, queen a4 check. There's a possibility now with the bishop, it can't go in reverse gear, of after queen d7 to maybe consider bishop b5. But let me just check that again, pardon me, let me just check this again. Yeah, bishop b5 would be good here, using the pin here. That's good enough to take on here, because yeah, it's just a very, very good position. We're going to be kicking the bishop with f3 and maybe winning d5 later on bishop d6, f3. That's really dangerous. And then taking on d5. So maybe this helps explain knight d7. Black doesn't want to play queen d7 here. So there are already major issues with the king in the center. So knight d7 is played. And now a very sharp move. Can you guess? If I give you 5 seconds starting from now, what would you play with white here? Okay, rook takes e4. White's trying to blast open this diagonal again. D takes is played, so that f7 sensitivity is reawakened. Knight f5, and it looks as though this is almost like the Morphy opera game. D7 is an issue. If white can just mobilize quickly against d7, black's lack of development this is going to be embarrassing. This d7 pin and win. It's a major issue. The knight's sitting very comfortably on f5. How can black actually get rid of this knight? It's sitting beautifully in front of these double pawns. But it's not just from a Nimzovitchian perspective, it's from a practical tactical perspective. f7 is very, very sensitive here. Black plays bishop c5, and now the casting rights for black are removed with knight g7 check. Black really doesn't want to go on this diagonal. He actually plays king e7. After check, king e8. Yes, the improvement made. Black can't castle now. Bishop e3. White is just going to play rook d1 as well soon. Bishop takes e3. F takes. If you look at the development, white has 3 pieces out. Black's rooks are not connected. His king's still stuck in the center and can't really find a safe place. If he castles, the queen could just quickly jump back via d1 maybe to get to the king over here very, very quickly, if nothing else. With the knight on f5, it looks pretty terminal, that sort of stuff. So black tries queen b6. It's not even threatening e3. The knight's protecting e3. So white simply plays rook d1. This is a crushing looking position. Black plays rook a7 now to defend d7. If he plays rook d8, then rook d6 is a nasty forcing move. And just taking here emphasizes f7 again. It's going to be winning f7. It's getting loads of material for his exchange sack. It's growing. So after rook a7, we do have this forcing move anyway, rook d6. And now f7 is tortured with queen b3. Threatening to take and maybe just retreat the bishop here to threaten mate, queen f7. Black, it seems entirely helpless here. This is pins here. If he plays rook f8, then knight g7 check, and simply queen a3 taking this diagonal helps the bishop tactically, and the black king is in real trouble still. So Najdorf tries queen c7, just giving up f7. After king d8, bishop e6, and black resigns here. Then you might have a couple of questions. Let's have a look at the final position. If black has to give up the queen, this is really no good. This is like nearly +9. So for sure forget that. If black tries to defend like this, and there's check, and then bishop takes d7, there's too many pins, just winning material, crushing. King e8, there's queen takes a7 there. So how does black actually defend d7 in this position? If rook b7, queen d5, putting the pressure on, and it's just rook takes d8, d7, bishop takes, and even that's like hanging now. So that's no good. So after queen d5, what does black actually do? Okay, doesn't want to set up another tactical vulnerability, but he's just this position, trying to defend d7 like this, runs into the most incisive might be check here. So if rook c7, we take there. If king here, we can actually now take on a6. So leaving that pin and trying to create another pin here. 2 pins are better than 1. And there's also knight d6 check threatened, this fork. So black is in terrible way here. For example, rook. Well, what does black actually do? Rook a8 is coming, or knight d6 is coming to win the queen. It's pretty hopeless. F here. This is a mate in 5 check, and it's diabolical. I know it's a massacre, but okay. So in the game, yeah, black resigned there. You might think, why did the king go to d8? Let's have a quick look. If it went to f8, then bishop h5 is probably the most incisive, along with queen e6. They're both actually a mate in 4. Let's look at this. It looks quite logical to threaten a mate in 1. So what does black actually play here? Okay, in this position, black. Let's just try it. It's actually a forced mate in 3 now. If black plays knight b6, then actually there's a beautiful move here, which is a mate in 3. Can you see it? If I give you 5 seconds, can you find a mate in 3 here? So 5 seconds starting from now. Okay, queen f7, and this knight is actually part of a mating net. It's taking out the exits from the black king. It takes it, check, and then mate. You see the exits are taken by the knight here, and the bishop is actually checkmate there. So yeah, it looks as though this was an absolute massacre of a game. It is one of Fischer's memorable games. So 24 moves, bishop e6, and black really didn't want to play on here. So what do we conclude, or what do we get from this game? Well, first of all, it's a bit of an opening surprise from Fischer playing this h3, but he's been playing it with great effect. And even in the last few years, some super grandmasters have been using the move h3. It seems, you know, the double pawns. One of the tactical issues of the double pawns is the classic f7 weakness. So white sacrificed the e pawn to try and blast open the diagonal to f7, and there's a lot of ramifications of that f7 weakness later, with the king still in the centre. Once the knight went in front of the double pawns, it was difficult to dislodge, and provided not just mating nets, but you know, black couldn't really castle with that knight there. I'm sure if we look at earlier points in the game, we'll see that the queen can just bounce back. Let me just 100% show that possibility. Could black have ever like castled here? Well, no. Before his casting rights were ruined. Well, actually, there was no possibility of casting. Pardon me. There was no possibility of casting because Fischer inserted knight g7. I'm getting confused now because this is the exact same position as though black can castle. But even if he could, it would be dangerous because of queen d1. But yeah, once the bishop had moved, there was a weakness of the last move, which allowed this check. Yeah, so black never even got to castle. That's a real shame. Black never got to castle, so that wasn't even tested. Black king just stuck in the centre. Nasty pin on d7, reminiscent of the classic Morphy game, where the opera game, where he won very quickly because of the d7 weakness. And basically, yeah, here, rook d6. Leveraging the queen's placement to gain another critical tempo, using that fantastic knight on f5. Get quickly to f7, basically. The pressure intensified on f7. It's devastating, a devastating crush of one of the legends of the game. Now, ordinarily, as I say, Najdorf has done fantastically well at Olympiads. Some Olympiads, he's done much better than Fischer. In fact, in this one, this was the only loss. He'd beaten several other grandmasters. I would actually be keen to check out, you know, Najdorf's wins in this particular Olympiad. He did fantastically well. Okay, I hope you got something from this game. Very interesting, sharp game where Fischer sacrifices quite quickly to expose that f7 weakness. The whole knight d5 getting the double pawns, creating the seeds of destruction, that f7 in particular, with the king safety issues. So that connection with the double pawn complex and king safety is emphasized quite vividly in this game. Okay, comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.